Welcome, everybody. Shiur number 623. We're learning today Le'ila Nishmas Moshe Doiv ben Rab Aaron Zisel, Le'ila Nishmas Blima Bas Rab Moshe, and that Yitzchak Yosef ben Rimolka should be Malchzel Shuva, Psoich Sha'ar Yisrael. Okay, getting back to a malach of TOFAIR. Sewing. So we went through all the various ins and outs as to what the problem is with TOFAIR, where it applies, and so on. Now we want to try and get into some practical applications in reference to the category of the actual needle and thread, as I say, where would really apply to us. Because again, most of us are not taking a needle and thread and starting to sew up a hem on Shabbos. We realize I can't make a pair of pants. I understand I can't start sewing on buttons on Shabbos. But where might it come into play and be a problem? So the story is like this. Let's say somebody said they have, let's say on Shabbos, they happen to see their button is coming loose. And all they have to do, good, I'm not taking a thread, I'm not taking a needle and thread and starting to sew on the button. That's not how I'm doing. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on the thread and tighten the button. So like this, it'll stay on till the end of Shabbos. Another example, let's say, for example, one has their cuff on their pants, or the hem of the pants is coming down, but the person sees that a thread is sticking out, and all they got to do is pull the thread and tighten the cuff or tighten the hem, and it'll be good to go till the end of Shabbos, no problem. Thereby, after Shabbos, I could go and sew it back up, and whatever the case is, I could walk in the street, I'm not going to trip over it. Is that allowed? Is all those actions allowed to be done? Another case, like we could understand, somebody's skirt, right? A woman's skirt, again, the same thing. Hem is falling down, doesn't look nice. All I have to do, I see the thread sticking out over there. I give a pull on the thread, a little lightly. I pull it, and all I do, and the hem just, sort of like, tightens a little bit, and I bring the hem back together. A little part of the hem, and like this it'll look decent enough where I could go outside. Would one be allowed to do all those various different actions on Shabbos in reference to TOFAIR sewing? So the answer is, unfortunately, absolutely not. One is not allowed. We're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch, but I just want to explain over here. We see a fact whereby it's the importance of understanding and knowing each malacha and being aware of what's taking place on Shabbos, because of the fact is one doesn't realize one is not allowed to do all these actions, and it's a shaila of a deraisa in many instances, like we said, 3 stitches, whatever the case is. But if a person is aware as to I can't do this, I can't, or they're at least aware I could do this, I can't do this, or where there might be a problem. Oh, listen, I listened to a shiur on TOFAIR sewing, my button is loose. Oh, I remember, I can't pull the string. If somebody is not aware of this, or they don't even know, they'll think whatever, or they might not even be paying attention, like, just haphazardly, they'll give a pull the string and tighten up the hem, and that's all. But now we know we learned TOFAIR. Hey, 1 second, I learned in a shiur TOFAIR sewing. Good, I'm not going to sew with a needle and thread, but I also learned that one cannot pull the string on their hem and tighten the hem. One cannot pull the string on their cuff and tighten the cuff. One cannot pull the string on the button and tighten the button. So it's very important. Here we see the importance of learning these inyanim, learning the halachas of Shabbos, how important it is. And you have to know in general, there's a special siyata d'shmaya. I want to explain to everybody, it's very important to keep in mind, there's a special siyata d'shmaya, help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that when a person learns a halacha, you have a few things. Number one, you're aware of what's going on. I'm aware, I'm learning TOFAIR. I'm going to keep in mind, and I can't pull the string, because it's something that people don't think about. This is a type of an action whereby somebody doesn't think about. They just automatically, they pull the string. Good, nobody's taking a thread and needle and starting to sew, but to pull a string that's coming down the hem or the cuff or whatever, people don't think, and they just haphazardly pull it. So it sort of like keeps us on our toes by learning these halachas. And number one. Number two, we have a special siyata d'shmaya from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that will be able to keep, that will special help from heaven that will be able to keep these halachas better. Okay, be it as it may, let's see it inside the Shulchan Aruch. So again, in Siman Shin Mem Sivav, the Mechaber says straight out, from the Gemara in Shabbos actually, but like it says in Mechaber the Shulchan Aruch, Chut shel tefira sheniftach, if one has a thread from a stitch that opened up, it loosened up, the button loosened up, the hem loosened up, the cuff loosened up, whatever it is aser l'moschai. One is not allowed to pull on it and to tighten it. Finishes off the Mechaber the Shulchan Aruch. Why can't I do that? Mishum TOFAIR. This is the Isser, or one of the ways of being over the Isser of TOFAIR sewing. You'll say, 1 second, hello, I'm not using a needle, I'm not using a thread, what am I doing wrong? No, this is a way of sewing. What are you doing? Again, let's keep in mind, we want to always keep in mind when we learn all the malachas, that we have to remember what the yesod, what the main foundation of our malacha is, and the foundation that we learned is bringing two pieces of material separately and making them into one. And of course, that's what's happening when I pull the thread and on my hem or on my cuff or whatever it might be, and I now tighten up the cuff. I'm bringing two pieces of material that weren't together before, and I now bring them together by having a stitch or tightening the stitch. And it's the same thing. So again, that's the malacha of TOFAIR, bringing two pieces of material, making them into one through a sewing, through a stitching process. And tells us the Mishnah Berurah, not just that, in Sifkat and Chav Zayin, not just that you can't do it, but says Mishnah Berurah, V'oisakein chayav chatas. He brings it from the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos Daf Ayin Hey. One is chayav for doing that. It's not just, well, it's a good thing to do, it's asmir d'Rabbanan. No, this is mamish the isser, the malacha of TOFAIR sewing. Oh, so now we're going to use the klalim. Now we're going to use the klalim, the guidelines which we learned in the previous two shiurim. We learned about 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 stitch, and it's asur min haTorah, and when it's asur midrabanan. So we're probably thinking, well, okay, good. Again, I'm not taking the needle and thread and sewing. So what do I have to know? 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 stitch. I'm not doing it. That's it. No. But in such a case where one pulls the stitch, they pull it up, the hem, or they pull the cuff, or it might be on a button, or whatever the case is. So explains to us the Mishnah Berurah for who this, when we say that it's asur to do and one would be chayiv, tells us the Mishnah Berurah again, and over there Sifkat and Chav Zayin, v'hu she'asur hakesher levasoif, that this is, they will be chayiv when they make a knot at the end of the thread. In other words, they pull the thread and they tighten the hem, they tighten the cuff, the button, whatever, and they're making now a knot at the end of the thread. It would be asur. That would be asur min haTorah. And afilu eina shel kayama. Again, even though the knot is not a kayama dekanat, which again we have to talk about. Says the Mishnah Berurah further, aval b'loi kesher. If there's no knot at the end of the thread that they're pulling, then it would be potter. Aval b'loi kesher klal is potter. The person would be potter, would be asur still to do midrabanan. But now the punchline is, which is usually the case, we want to keep in mind, that's only over there by 2 stitches. If it started to loosen up 2 stitches, which is a small amount if you think about it. How big is a stitching? A tiny little stitch, 2 stitches. But when you have 3 stitches that loosened up, one again, they pull the string, my hem is coming down, let me just give it a little pull and tighten it up like this. After Shabbos I'll be able to fix it and sew. In the meantime I'll be good to go. If 3 stitches got loosened up, umoschan, and the person again pull that and tighten their hem, tighten their cuff, or whatever the case might be, umoschan, then tells us the Mishnah Berurah is chayiv. The person will be chayiv af b'loi kesher, even without tying a knot at the end of the thread, because again, don't forget, this whole case of pulling the thread, tightening the cuff, tightening the hem, or whatever the case might be, they're tightening those stitches that were already made before Shabbos, they just got loosened up, is the malacha of TOFAIR. So we're going to use the guidelines of TOFAIR sewing, which, as we know, 2 stitches without a knot is asur midrabanan, and we know by now also 3 stitches without a knot is asur min haTorah, because of the fact it is a kayamadika thing, it's an everlasting thing. And over here we bring in the kayama, the everlasting part of it, which we've been talking about, and that is the more something is everlasting, whether it's in TOFAIR sewing, we're going to see it's in boina in building. We're going to talk about it in kesher, in kosher, in sewing. Also, the longer it could last, the worse one is off. The worse it is. So again, in this case, we have 3 stitches, and as we know, the klal is 3 stitches in the halachas of sewing on Shabbos is asur min haTorah. So to go ahead and pull that item would be asur min haTorah when it's 3 stitches. Okay, we're going to stop here. But in the meantime, we see whereby, we talk about a malacha whereby we might think that it's not really negaya to me at all. Here we talk about stitching and threads and sewing, but we see a simple thing like this, just pulling the thread. One could be dealing with a dioraisa on Shabbos. We're going to get a little bit more into some more practical applications in this inyan, in this yesod of pulling the threads on Shabbos in the upcoming shiurim. Thank you for listening. Aslach and bracha, kol tov.